Hey, good morning, everyone. So, it's 11 o'clock, so we're about to start. My name's Dr. Kazmierczak. I'm from Penta Blockchain Solutions. I've a background in working in high integrity systems, safety critical systems. I've been an academic, and now I've left university and I'm in business, and we're building blockchains. So Penta Blockchain Solutions is part of the Penta network. The Penta network has been around since about 2017. Penta Blockchain Solutions in particular is focused on data solutions, trusted data, and helping our customers to deal with their trusted data. Those are the kind of things that we tend to focus on when we do our projects. But I will say that currently all of our projects are customer funded. We don't have any other kind of funding, and we're profitable, which is a strange thing in this world. So today, what I want to talk about a bit is the sort of projects that we do, the sort of projects that we've deployed, the kind of lessons that we've drawn from those projects, some of the factors that we've had to grapple with in doing those projects, and maybe we can explore some of the technology initiatives that we can think of going forward. So I thought I'd start by just quickly having a look at some of the projects that we've done. If you have a look at them, that table of projects spans many different industries, many different verticals, and some of those blockchains have been running for quite a long time. Personally, I actually like that top one, the blockchain rice project. It's been running for about 2.5, nearly 3 years. Covers about 12.5 million acres of farmland in northern China. And certainly one of the real lessons that we've learned from that blockchain is that if people can actually trust what they're buying, then they're willing to pay a higher price for that product. And in this case, it's been rice. Smorgasbord there. We've done smart cities and garbage. We've done insurance. We've done some loan fractionalization. And most recently, we've been doing blockchain traceability, supply chain traceability. And so that's the sort of mix of the sort of projects we've been doing. And also an idea of just how many nodes we've deployed in each. So let's have a look at some of the supply chain work that we've been doing. A very recent one, a blockchain coffee. We've been doing supply chain for La Merced, one of the largest suppliers of coffee in Colombia. And the project was simply to track coffee from Colombia to Florida. What we wanted to get out of it was just to see how easy it was going to be in a real-world deployment to take some IoT sensors, put them with the coffee shipment, and track that coffee from start to finish. Yeah? And if you look at the photos there, that's a shipment of coffee. That's what it looks like. We don't quite have that many sensors, but we did actually manage to get enough to put it in several bags. And interestingly enough, we also tried to compare two different kinds of sensors and to get their data and to see how easy that data was to load up and put on a blockchain. There we go. And just to convince you that we actually did do this, here are the results. We had some surprises. The first surprise was that the coffee didn't actually go to Florida. But that's okay. Our tracking solution worked. We got all the way to, there's this place called Canada, at the north of the US, I believe, when it got there. Here's the interesting thing to me. We got 2,381 data points. But we got 2,381 data points from Colombia, from Panama, from the Bahamas, from somewhere around the east coast of the US, and from Toronto. So we managed to span many jurisdictions, many different countries, and many different wireless technologies, and still get that data onto our blockchains. And that data is there. At the moment, it's not public, but at least it's there for Merced to use, and it's there for Merced's customers to use. And it was quite an interesting deployment because it actually had quite a few challenges in being able to not only work with the IoT sensors, but also to work with the data itself, to get that data in a usable form onto the blockchain. So we've been doing this kind of supply chain traceability, and we've got ongoing projects in a form of blockchain coffee. We're working with some of the largest coffee producers in South America and in Colombia. La Meseta, Juan Valdez. We've been doing the same kind of traceability solution for cacao. Of course, we've done our blockchain rice. And we're looking at projects in the future in wine and in cannabis. So I'm the engineering lead at Penta Blockchain Solutions, and that poses some very interesting problems for us in the engineering sense. We've had one very nice, very successful project with La Meseta. We kind of understand the technology, but you know what it's like to do a pilot project. The technology is often last minute, quick pipeline, we have to do things quick. Our problems are now how to take that idea and how to take the germ of that idea, how to deploy it at scale over many projects. And a question that's been really on my mind in the last few months as we go forward is how do we tool to scale blockchain technology? 2,381 data points is small, and once you start to get into the hundreds of thousands of data points, we need to have some tooling to help us build blockchains that will actually scale as the size of our projects scale. So I'm very interested in that. I thought I'd also show you another project that we've done. We've deployed a loan fractionalization project. So the project tracks the ownership of chain of title of loans. This is basically an asset tracking kind of blockchain. We've deployed that. The blockchain technology itself is very standard. But here was our challenge with this project. We had to integrate blockchain with an existing enterprise, an existing business. And so immediately that raises questions of, well, how do you do that, both at the technological level and at the business level? And so at the technology level, we had to work out solutions of how we would basically integrate with their business systems and take the data that they wanted us to take without being too invasive on their business systems. And then we actually had to solve a whole lot of business problems. Who has ownership of the data and when? As soon as the data crosses the line from their business to our business, it's in our custody. We're responsible for that data, even though it's on a blockchain. We've taken on a certain amount of risk. How do we manage that risk, and what do we do about that risk? And so custody, risk, in that sort of system, it's not straightforward at the moment. So we actually had to work through some of that. And when you are taking on somebody else's data, you have to be careful because often they will simply want you to take on all of that risk and simply say, well, it's on your blockchain, you now own it because it's secure. Yeah, so we actually had to learn a few lessons around managing our risk in deployments. Oh, sorry, there we go. So that's examples of just two of the deployments that we've done. Those blockchains are running. They've been running for about a year now. And so in the spectrum of the types of projects that people do, where do we sit? There's lots of different kinds of projects that you can do. We sit over here. You see my cursor there. We tend to do, and our customers ask for, mostly static registry kinds of projects. Some identity, maybe elements of a dynamic registry there, but we're mostly doing asset tracking. We're mostly doing transactions on assets. Our customers haven't asked for smart contracts or haven't asked for sophisticated smart contracts yet. They haven't actually asked for anything more sophisticated than simple registries at the moment. And that's enough for them. So, interestingly, we were expecting that people would be coming to us and saying, oh, well, I need a smart contract to do all these transactions on blah. That hasn't been the case. So, we've learned some lessons out of that. And just before I go on to those lessons, not all of our deployments are on Hyperledger Fabric. We actually have some deployments on Hyperledger Fabric, but we've also used Ethereum and we've also used BigChainDB. Why? Hey, let me start by saying I actually like Hyperledger, and Hyperledger has a lot of appeal to me. Hyperledger has appeal because you can get a good ordering of blocks without having to go through proof of work consensus or proof of stake consensus or any of these complicated consensus mechanisms. For social governance, I can understand why those are there, but for people like me who just are dealing with data and complicated data situations, sometimes being able to get the data onto the chain quickly without the need for consensus is a good thing. Hyperledger gives you that. But in our previous deployments and our previous attempts at deploying with Hyperledger, we've ran into some issues. The kinds of projects that we do are often exploratory. We don't do a lot of projects that say, right, I'm going to invest $1 million into this blockchain because it's going to be our company's future for the next 50 million years. We get projects that are, I want to try blockchain. I don't know what it's about, but I believe it could be good for us. I want to see what sort of value it has and what's our rate of return. Keep it small. Can you do this for me in 2 weeks? I sometimes get rung up by my CEO and he says, I've got a new contract for you. And he'll give us the time frame and I'll politely say, oh, let me think about that. And I'm really thinking to myself, you want what? When? Our deployments are short. And so, but Hyperledger Fabric itself has a complex design space. When we start to work with Hyperledger, there are a number of factors that come into play, and they're all related. I'm sure you've experienced it. There's the actual design of the network itself. There's the design of the chain code. There's the design of the administrative structure on top of that. And all of that extends out your timeline, and for me, that adds risk to my delivery time frame. So managing that risk of delivery is core, and it's key to the way that we produce products. And so sometimes, when the timeline has been short, Hyperledger's too complex, we're going to go for a more robust, easier to deploy technology because we've just got to get the job done. Most of those points on that slide are related exactly to that point. Yeah, when we were playing with Hyperledger, the documentation still needed a little bit of work. And there wasn't the tooling available that there is today. Hey, now that's changed though, because I've looked around the theatre upstairs, I've looked around some of the trade, some of the booths upstairs, and the tooling is definitely improving. There's some good tooling. And I think with that sort of tooling, we can start to deploy blockchains a lot quicker. Yeah, that's right. The main issue there has been timely application. So, here are some of the interesting lessons that we've pulled out of those projects. Those projects on the first slide in the table, and those two deployments for Merced and our loan fractionalization. Yeah, for us, realistically, most applications are small. They're going to be less than 10 nodes. They're going to be, yeah.
So you said 10 nodes, do you mean 10 different organizations, or
No.
just one organization?
One organization, 10 peers. We will get, sorry, I'll take an aside. We will get sometimes one organization with multiple departments. So, for example, there would be an organization with 3 different departments, and you might want to give each department 3 peers in order to create some kind of fault tolerance within each department. But generally speaking, our customers haven't quite worked out. They haven't worked out really what the value of the blockchain is going to be to them in dollar terms, what the rate of return is going to be on investment, and so they're just exploring. Oh. Can I get back to that question? Because I think that's a very, very interesting question, and there's not a simple answer to that question. Yeah. The whole idea of how do you, if I may, there's a real question of how do you generate trust in the network if you've only got one organization signing? And I think that's a very interesting question, but I'd like to move on, and we can get back to that if that's okay. Yeah, so we actually typically get asked to deploy small numbers of nodes in one organization. And how does the general public then go and trust that, I guess, is a thing that we're still working on. But I want to quickly move on. Our systems are socio-technical systems. What do I mean by that? It involves people interacting with people, mediated by our tech. And the mediation can be either through contracts, as our loan fractionalization, where people are dealing with assets, and they're buying and selling assets and splitting up assets, and that's mediated through our technology. The trust for them comes from the fact that they've actually got a blockchain which is immutable in the middle. Or we've got people working with sensors and sensor acquisition on the one hand, looking at the data and using that data to make purchasing choices at the other end. And so the technology mediates. That has a flow-on effect that says that you don't design blockchains, you design systems. And the systems have to be designed with people in mind. Which brings us on to the follow-on point that it's hard to show people the value of the blockchain. I can't walk up to you and say, trust me, I have a hash. What we're doing at the moment is we're working with the #1 coffee producer in Colombia to try and solve this exact problem with their marketing team. And it is still a problem. We have to find ways of showing people, this is a socio-technical system, don't forget, we have to find ways of showing people that they can trust what they're purchasing because it's been validated, or the data that they're relying on has been validated. following on from that point, the blockchain is not the center of our universe. It's a part of a larger system that creates trust around the data. And in creating trust around the data, we have to be able to acquire the data, we have to be able to work with that data, we have to put it on the blockchain, and then we have to be able to get it off again. And those channels have to be trusted as well as the blockchain. So the blockchain is an integral part, but is not the final product. And we've also learned from integrating with our blockchain with other businesses that when you integrate a blockchain with another technology, with another business system, it fundamentally changes the nature of that system. Oh, that one's an interesting one. Let me explain what I mean. Most of our business partners use very straightforward deployments. They will use a layered architecture to take data from the web, put it into a database, and take it back out again. They'll use model view controllers. They'll use more web-designed type of systems. And now you put a blockchain in. And a blockchain has 10 nodes, and it's distributed. And there are nodes not necessarily on your premises, and you've changed the nature of that very simple design. And in turn, that changing the nature of the design forces us to think about how to create the best possible interactions with the businesses and where to take our data points to put onto our blockchains in their processes. And we would like to do that non-invasively, but that's hard to do. Sometimes we just simply have to integrate with their technology at a very fundamental level in order to get the data we want onto our blockchain. So yes, when you stick a blockchain into somebody else's business, it's going to change the nature of their system. So I guess to sum it up, when you do these kinds of deployments, we're often doing short-term deployments, they're exploratory. We really do need to have good design and sometimes good design patterns for these blockchains. When I say good design, I'm talking about some good design patterns, especially when you're integrating. And of course, the other thing we really do want to have is good tooling that you can actually rapidly prototype with and make things happen with quickly. So let me quickly think about a little bit about design. We need good design patterns. I haven't got any in mind at the moment. I've got a bunch of experiences. Some of them have worked. Some of them have been a little bit more interesting. But here are some of the things you have to consider anyway. A lot of these come down to being able to take the problem and blockchainerize it. Oh, let me explain that. A lot of these bullet points come down to being able to say, if I have to deal with trusted data, and I'm going to use a blockchain to deal with that trusted data and to hand people trust back, then these are some of the design decisions you've got to think about. Right? A couple of these have caused me personally a bit of tension. Or not tension, but we've had to grapple with them. We've had to grapple with some of these things. Smart contracts are a thing that we've actually had to grapple with. Hyperledger, as you know, everything is a smart contract. And so we have to design smart contracts to put data on the chain, take data off the chain, so on. Those smart contracts have got to interact seamlessly with the data pipeline. And more importantly, they have to be secure. Because if you're putting customers' data, as we said, we're putting customers' data onto a blockchain, we need to know that those smart contracts that we put onto the blockchain won't damage, manipulate, change, add to, subtract from, nothing, or minimally impact the data from the customer that we're putting on. We also have to think about how to design a blockchain network. A lot of this comes down to your trust issues now. Oh, not your trust issues, I said that wrong, but you know. It comes down to the issue of trust. Let me put it like that. Our deployments are typically, as we said, small customer, one organisation, because we would love to get multiple organisations involved, but our customers are still getting their feet wet with blockchain. And so when we build the blockchain network, we do think about trust. Right? So some customers will simply say, hey, I don't want to know. You the blockchain guys, you deploy it, you manage it, the risk is yours. We'll give you the data, you hand us back the hashes, we're happy. Other customers will say, wait a minute, how do I trust that you're doing the job right? How do we trust you, the blockchain company, that you haven't done anything? And so we have to say, okay, well, we'll share nodes. And then we get into situations where we actually have to give some of the nodes to our customers, because then they can actually see what's going on. They can look at the transaction hashes as they go through, and we keep some nodes for ourselves. We haven't got too many projects which do that yet. Most of our customers have been happy to say, you take the risk, here it is. But we are getting to the point where people are starting to call for more transparency in the process, and if there is transparency in the process, well, we'll let you manage some of the nodes yourself. And along with that, we have different signing keys for different nodes. So we know who's signed what transaction and when. And so we're actually not on a track where we suddenly go, okay, 15 organizations, here it is. We're actually taking a slow approach to building up this, and we're learning things along the way. And of course, we'd love to be able to design to requirements. We love to be able to know what we're doing. Most of the time, our projects are exploratory, like the Merced project, where the requirements aren't particularly known in advance. They emerge as the project goes. And again, it would be nice to be able to say, right, we've got these number of validator nodes, we've got this number of proposer nodes, but it's often the case of, let's just deploy, let's see what's going, and we'll work it out as we go. We'll get to the end of the project and then we'll take the next stage. And that's how that's the sort of project we tend to get. Oh, and yes, for Hyperledger 2, there's channel design. You've got to think very carefully about your channel design, your communications, the privacy of your data, who is going to talk to who else, and you've got to think very carefully about policies for security. Security's been a bit of a thing for us, and clients do actually want security. It's not necessarily the first thing on their mind, but if they hand you their data, they want to know that it's secure and nobody's going to take their data or leak it or have other things happen to it. And so design's the first of our big issues. The second of our big issues was tooling. And development tools are out there, but gee, I'd love to have tools where we can just rapidly configure and deploy test nets, or better still, rapidly configure and deploy nets on customer sites. Because that's what we need to do. We need to do that, especially where we're in this exploratory phase. We used Hyperledger Composer for a while. That was nice. I believe that's deprecated now. But if we could get something like Hyperledger Composer, we've called it Hyperledger Composer A+. We'll give it an A+. But if we can get something like Hyperledger Composer where we can actually prototype smart contracts, simulate network behavior, get an idea of what we're going to deploy before we actually deploy it on a customer site, great. That'd be great for us. And I know that Docker and Kubernetes are already an integral part of Hyperledger, but I'm too old to mess with YAML files. And if we can do the same kind of work and the same kind of orchestration that those tools do, but from a much friendlier, much more transparent platform, that would be great for people like us. Okay. Oh, and I thought I'd quickly show you the kind of tool stack that we use. This is all of the tools that we use, except for the ones that I haven't shown you. But it's a fairly vanilla kind of stack. And in fact, we've kept it vanilla, we've kept it absolutely simple for a reason, and the reason is we want to be robust, we don't want to have any excitement in our lives. We've already got too much. So let's keep things robust, let's keep things predictable, let's stick to very known technologies so that when we deploy, we're robust. And we can predict our results. So we've grappled with design, we've grappled with platforms and tools, and we've grappled with smart contracts. We don't deploy smart contracts. In fact, I've tried to keep smart contracts or the involvement of smart contracts fairly simple in the deployments that we've done. One of my concerns is security. And I guess this is where my security and high integrity systems background kicks in. Because when we look at the sort of code that we build, I can guarantee the state of my Hyperledger deployment at the start of a smart contract. I can guarantee the post condition at the end, but I don't know what the invariants are in the middle. I don't know if somebody deploys a smart contract on one of our platforms. I can't guarantee that they're not taking data off that platform. I don't think I can. I don't think I can guarantee that we don't have anything else going on in that time. So security's been a bit of an issue. And for me, when we've been deploying and we need to be solid, we need to be safe, we need to be secure, we've backed away from smart contracts and just gone for simpler solutions. So this is an ongoing thing. As soon as you start to put smart contracts onto a chain and those smart contracts circulate around different nodes, if they're not all on our system, then I've effectively lost control. That worries me. So we've been grappling with exactly how far we should go down the smart contract line and where should we back off and exactly where that particular balance would be between good smart contracts and right now we've exposed ourselves to and our customers to all sorts of things. So it's one of the things we've been grappling with. So, how's my time? So, looking forward, here are some of the things that we think going forward. Smart contract development, dashboards, some interesting tooling. I would love to get some interesting computer-aided design tools into the community so that we can actually really start to accelerate the way that we deploy and do our applications. And I'm about to wind up, so we'll leave some time for questions. But if I could put one desire or one wish out there to finish my talk on, I'll put this one out there. Because I would like to be able to deploy blockchains that we have confidence in, blockchains that we can trust, blockchains that are performant, out into the marketplace in under an hour. Thank you. And that'll end my talk. We have time for questions. Yeah. Sorry, well, we would. It's so much of this comes down to the user requirements. We've been working with Hyperledger, we've been working with our own Penta network. We'd like to see those blockchains come up. Platform, blockchain as a service often simply ties you to a platform. And we like to be independent. Yeah. So using something like? Well, we do. Right. Well, we are starting to do that, yes. So we are using Ansible. We have started to. So yes, good suggestion. Love it. One of the tools I didn't show. Yes. Mm-hmm. GDPR? Yep. Right. Oh, yep, I have a perspective. Oh, it's good, I have a perspective on that. Yep. So, well, let me answer the second question first, if I may, because the first question is a kind of a lengthier debate. So the first question is, the sort of tools I would like are tools that would let you basically do... I've seen tools of the sort upstairs, yes. So, let me take a leaf out of the software engineering toolbook. So we've got good computer-aided design tools. We can visually lay out software designs, networks, and basically start to get templates up, and even do some simulation work to run through some of the logic. We could do the same here. Rapid prototyping tools, things that you can, tools where you can actually deploy very quickly and just get an idea of whether that network is run, simulate smart contracts, Hyperledger, the sort of things that Hyperledger Composer was doing, but possibly could do better. That's the sort of tooling I would like to see. At the moment, our focus is really on deployment tools. When we operationalize, we have to move on to operational monitoring and dashboards, but at the moment it's mostly deployment. And for your second question, I'm just quickly having a look at our time here. Yes, 1 minute. We may have to finish out in the corridor. GDPR, CCPA, privacy, these are both things that affect us when we put data onto the blockchains. And so one of the things that we're grappling with, we actually have a privacy product that's about to be launched, I think next week or the week after, on March the 18th. That deals with CCPA, and we've been very careful to design that product around the fact that we only take metadata and not actual data. And so that limits our exposure. But in doing that, we also have to be careful of our own CCPA requirements and make sure that we also manage that. So that's so my thoughts on GDPR, for example, yes, it's a good whether you think it's a good legislation or a bad legislation, it's here to stay. We have to deal with it. How can we deal with it? Well, blockchain gives us a very, very good way of dealing with it. But we have to be very, very careful in how we do it. And I think that's our session ended. We're happy to talk further in the corridor. Thank you.